Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 83 of the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. Don't forget to check out the Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/rockandrollbeerguy. You'll get access to a bunch of exclusive interviews I did at Psycho Las Vegas with Andrew WK and CKY and all that, plus a bunch of other exclusive content and merchandise. Support the podcast. In this episode, I talked to Anthony Lucero from the band Cult Leader. We talk about their newest release, A Patient Man, and some of the themes behind the music itself. We talk a little bit about Anthony's past, some of the religious themes that influenced the record, as well as his creative style. We talk about communicating and how important that is for society. I had a great time talking to him, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Please pick up their new record, A Patient Man. It is a ripper. Cheers.
Arise, mother of misery. Arise, divine sorrow. I offer up all I am, so that you may feast on me.
What's up?
What up?
Nah, it's waking my ass up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad I got up a little early, made some coffee.
yeah, right here. Cheers.
Cheers, man. What's your preferred coffee of choice? Doesn't matter.
I like Stumptown.
Stumptown? All right.
Yeah, the home. What is it called? Homestead, something like that. It's nice. Yeah.
I have I have the whole like hipster setup with the Chemex and the pour over, and it takes like 35 minutes to make coffee for some reason. And I've now downgraded all the way to just $5 coffee beans that I could buy.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to do the range. Like I've got like my super fancy takes forever to make shit, and then like I just want coffee now without having to do it kind of setup.
Yeah, man. I started trying to do like a cold brew setup, but it I don't know. It never tastes as good as the cold brew that I can get from like the local coffee shop or something. But I don't
True.
know. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've never fucked with it. I just try to just buy it straight from the whoever's gonna sell it to me. I'll take it.
Nice. Well, let me do the little introduction here. Welcome, everyone, to the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. I'm here with Anthony Lucero from the band Cult Leader. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for saying my last name correctly.
Of course. Actually, I was going to ask you, Lucero sounds Spanish. Where's that from?
The way of lineage comes from. So my dad is Apache Indian.
Oh, nice. All right.
So it just like the Hispanic influence through Apache influence, all that stuff. But yeah, my mom's Italian. My dad's native.
Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, I try to explain that to some of my friends that like I'm Cuban and my great grandmother is native, and they don't get it. They're like, "What do you mean?" Like, well, I mean, my entire bloodline is just a bunch of colonists from Europe, and then the slaves that they took with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I look like a total white boy, so most people don't. It's hard to. It's one of those things. But
Yeah.
it's fine.
Who's that dude on your profile picture I was looking at in Skype?
Oh, it's Bob from La Bamba.
I was like, shit, I might have the wrong Anthony Lucero. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that guy's like my spirit animal. I just love him. He was the artist and the biker, all that shit. I just like him.
Nice, man. So you guys just put out the newest record on, what was it, November 7th, around that time? November something, early November.
7th or 9th. I can't remember what date exactly.
A Patient Man. You guys recorded it with the homie Kurt over in God City.
Mm-hmm.
overall, what's the theme that you did, lyrically for A Patient Man, and how does it different from the previous album?
It's kind of, I think the band itself just has an overarching theme for us, which is just however we can express just every bit of negativity in life. You know what I mean? So it's like, it ranges, like it's, like mental health issues to the death of loved ones to being raised in like an overly religious situation, like how they all kind of intertwine into, just general neuroses and trying to work all that shit out for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it's all real, very real topics that people deal with on a daily basis, but not a lot of people tend to talk about it or make it the forefront of their art. Some people, if they do, it's very subdued or they leave it up for interpretation, but you guys are very upfront about it. And are you always this angry?
No, honestly, like one of my friends, he just came to visit me and we had like a fucking cool day just hanging out and going to museums and shit. And then the record came out like 2 months later. And after the record came out, he got in touch with me again and was just like, so are you all right? Or like, because we had a good time and it seems like you're in a really good place. And, but the record kind of like says different than what we experienced, hanging out.
For sure, man.
But it was just like, well, yes and no. Like, I am good. I do think that, like, right now, like my life situation is the best it's ever been as an adult. I'm very happy with where I'm at. But that doesn't change the fact that all of that shit still exists, and it's just unshakable, and it's constant. But I have an outlet.
Right.
And so I do really try to focus on not using it for my art, but making sure that I can focus it in a direction that's not gonna just be aimed at everybody in my life, so that I just don't take it out on other people. I can focus it in like an artistic outlet, and that alone helps. And like the times that we go a long time without having shows or doing it, I can totally see like it starts to seep into everything else. Like I can't keep the two separate as much as I'd like to. And I mean, everything's still constantly there. I think I've found a way to compartmentalize it to a point to where it's just through
the art.
Yeah, it's just a good way to do it.
Yeah, man. And you're lucky you have that. You've been able to express that through music, because a lot of people have that issue or several of those issues and don't have a real way of venting it out. And I guess you could kind of see that manifesting in shit that's going on in the world, like, the politics and all that shit. You see the anger and all this in people, and like you sit back and you're like, why are they doing that kind of why are they acting that way? And then you realize they don't really have an outlet like you have yourself, Yeah. And it's important. It's therapeutic. A lot of people don't get that. I used to sing in a band for almost 10 years too, and I feel that it's been like 2.5, 3 years since we stopped playing, and I feel that itch kind of like, in the background. And it's like, man, I used to be able to scream at people off the stage. And that's why now I get like random outbursts, and it's nuts, dude. And it's funny, we have a very similar trajectory. I also play bass in another band called Vultures or Wolves that I remember showing the guys in the band Gaza back in the day, and going like, hey, look, guys, this is what we're trying to do, but like serious. And it's that expression of I guess, everything that makes us angry, all the things from our past, you know? So
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah.
if you don't mind delving a little deeper, like, if you could pick one of those subjects and tell me a little bit more about it from your point of view, that one of your sources of, I guess, the dark energy that you're putting in your music.
I think just the majority of it is just like trying to find a healthy way to express dealing with like depressive ideals, or like,
Well, you
I don't know.
mentioned
That's-
religion. You mentioned religion.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
You grew
yeah.
up in a very religious household.
yeah.
So explain that to me. What kind of religion was it that your family was involved with?
Well, it was a Pentecostal Christian church situation, and so it was like full blown ultra fundamentalist, like speaking in tongues,
Oh, geez.
crazy,
Like
crazy stuff.
the stuff you see on TV with the hands on the face and they,
Yeah, like
all that stuff.
like pushing people over in the name of Jesus and all that kind of shit. And it was like, my mom was heavily involved in it, and she taught at a Christian school that was actually attached to the church. So the school was in the back of the church, and it was really, really small. Like the graduating, it was literally everything from first grade to 12th grade. And the graduating classes were usually like 4 to 8 seniors, like really, really small. And we would go to church every day, sometimes twice a day. And it was all just like this super fundamentalist indoctrination shit that was just constant, nonstop. And my mom put us in that school because since she worked there, we could go there for free.
Okay.
And so that was kind of like the main situation. But it was just, we were wrapped in, she's a believer, but as she's gotten older and we've all grown up, everyone's taken huge steps back from like, how serious they're taking all of that kind of stuff. So like my parents have taken a huge turn. Well, my mom especially. My dad was a crazy man growing up, like he was a biker. I had liked to drink, do all that kind of stuff. And so he cleaned up at some point and found God, started going to church with my mom. But then at that same time, they also kind of like chilled out a little bit. But being so heavily wrapped up in all that stuff, it was just completely inescapable. Every friend I had was from that school. Every social interaction was involved with the church and doing all that kind of stuff. So, but then once, I discovered Christian heavy music first. And so like, I got to give huge props to, like bands like Zao or Unashamed. Just these bands who were technically Christian, like Training for Utopia, a lot of the solid state bands that kind of made it okay to listen to heavy music openly.
Right.
And, well, they're Christian bands, but, some of them were really fucking good bands also. And that led to, like, my older sister got into straight edge, and by that, obviously, she got into, like, Minor Threat and all that. So then she gave me, like, a Discord anthology.
Nice.
So it was, like, everything that had been recorded on Discord, like Government Issue and all that shit. And so that just, like, it started going from there. And then she took me to my first show. And, like, once you go to your first show and it all makes sense, and you're like, well, this is what I have to do.
Right. What was that first show?
I think it was Bloodlet.
Bloodlet. Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
It was fucking awesome. Yeah.
I do not have, my first band was not as cool as that.
Yeah.
My first band was Green Day.
See, but either way, man, if it does something and it like shows you something different, then that's fucking cool.
It's funny because I don't like them at all anymore. I guess I did when I was a kid, because obviously I ended up at that show somehow. But man, it's funny. Like Green Day, no, Bloodlet's much better to have. That's
So I'll take. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, just growing out of all that stuff, getting more involved in the hardcore scene and less involved in church, as I was getting closer to being 18, and then by being cut from the leash. 'Cause that was a thing that my mom did. Like, you have to go to church until you're 18, but once you're that, like, she genuinely, you're just like, you can choose to or not. And so as soon as that happened, I was just 100% in the hardcore scene, just going to shows. Like, literally every show that happened, didn't matter who was playing or when it was, just went to every goddamn show, started bands. And then over time, like, grew out of calling myself a Christian into calling myself an agnostic, and then discovering, like, Dawkins and Hitchens and all that, and being like, no, I'm atheist, obviously. This is everything they're saying makes so much sense. And then it just kind of starts to fold back on itself with building resentment for having to deal with all that religious bullshit for so long, and the weird things that it drills into your brain that you just have to deal with, or then you have to justify with the world, that they don't actually make sense in the real world. They're just things that you're being taught within this situation, but then once you're in a real life situation, it's like none of it makes sense, and it's all nonsense. So just like trying to justify all that stuff. I'm not blaming my mom or any of that stuff. I fucking love my mom, and it's one of those things that you don't realize how much it fucked you up over the long term until you have to rectify the situation in real time, growing up, and then you hit something and you're like, well, this isn't what I was taught growing up, but it's obviously the truth. But every bit of, like, religious guilt and fear inside of your head is telling you, it's just giving you that bit of conflict. And it's, so a lot of the songs are just about trying to deal with that conflict, or the resentment of actually seeing so many people in the church who total dirtbags, but they were the ones with authority, and you had to do what they said, and just that kind of stuff, But sure. So many people are wonderful, beautiful people, highly functional, and have great lives outside of this religious thing, and then you see inside the religious thing that the underbelly is just dirty, and it's Yeah,
it's weird, man. So I'm not too familiar with the Pentecostal Christians, and was it the part of it that's kind of abusive? And I used to be in a very strict Catholic school as well when I grew up, and they were abusive. Like, they would hit us with rulers and shit like that. So like that.
Yeah, it was the same. Yeah, we had a demerit system. So if you got 3 demerits in a day, then at the end of the day, we would all the bad kids. There was like 4 of us always, and the same 4 kids, and we would have to line up in the hallway while another teacher was in another room with a paddle, and we would all wait, and each kid would take their turn. We'd have to go into that room, like grab a table, and then just have some lady fucking beat you with a paddle. God. and then she would cry, and then she would hug you, and then you would go about your day, and then the next day you would be a kid and get 3 demerits again, and go in and get a beating again the next day. And so it's just...
Were they all up in the nun outfit and everything, the whole thing, or just... No.
They were just regular people.
Oh, wow.
who were in just but within the structure,
The school I went to, they were in the whole get up, and it was just really fucked up, man. And I completely connect with what you're saying and the music that you guys are putting out because of that. Like, you don't think about it until you get older. I thankfully escaped at an earlier age. Like, something broke in me where in the middle of one of the classes, they were talking about something. I think it was dinosaurs, or I brought up dinosaurs somehow, and I don't know what happened, but the answer that they gave me, something broke in my brain, and I just started laughing nonstop. Like, I couldn't stop it. I was crying to the point where I wanted to stop, and I was like throwing up and all this shit. Like, I couldn't stop laughing. And they called my mother, and they're like, "Hey, your son's possessed, and we're gonna have to do the whole thing. And I'm like, my mother came running and took me out of there. She was like, no, you're not doing the exorcism thing or any of that nonsense. We're just going to pick him up and put him in a public school because obviously it's not working out.
Yep.
But
yeah,
man,
yeah, that's crazy.
It's nuts that even to this day, you would think, it's 2018. By now, people would have moved away from such antiquated, weird, ritualistic things. Like, we have access to the internet. You see things. It's a different world. Yet we still have people that follow these crazy things that instill homophobia or violent tactics, on people. And it's and then people are surprised, like, oh, we have so many shooters. Yeah, no shit. We're traumatizing children from a young age. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because that's the thing. It's our culture. Like plenty of other countries have open gun laws and have this, and it's so confusing and fucked up.
Well, I'm grateful for music like the music you guys are putting out. It lets me go in a mosh pit and just kind of rage out and let it out that way, as opposed to letting it out how like we were saying, some other people do with guns and other violent acts.
Yeah. I mean, because there is something about the shared experience of going to a heavy music show. You know what I mean? So like, yes, it means something to the band who's doing things, but it's meant just as much to me to be someone in the crowd watching a band that I love. So I do think that like the outlet goes both ways. Like the band is getting their outlet by performing, but going to a show is just as vital, and having some sort of outlet and community within it, I think it really does beneficial things for
the psyche.
Yeah, it just does. It helps a lot of people, and it's fucking cool, but it does.
Hell yeah, man. And I always try to get as many people out to shows, and even people that wouldn't regularly go to a show like that. Like I grew up in Miami. Well, I was born in Jersey. I lived there till I was 15, and then in Miami, we moved to Miami, and I started going to shows, and that's where I started the band and everything. And all of my friends were Cuban dudes from Cuba that just dance, do dance music, salsa music, all that shit. So I would drag them out to fucking, local hardcore shows. Just be like, dude, just go. You don't understand what you're missing out on. It's not even about the music as much. You know what I mean? It's not about appreciating like technicality. It's more of like, just go and let it out. Just go mosh, just go fucking rage with some people, and you'll feel this cathartic, like kind of post-meditation feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of them thought I was just nuts because I wanted to just be violent or scream at someone. But it's such a great way to let it out. It's weird to me that not more people in this day and age are into heavier music. I have been seeing, and I've talked about this with a few of the previous guests, that a lot of the bands that I listen to are getting darker. Like you guys seem to be getting a little darker, the new album is a little more melodic, a little more emotional, and it just, you're singing in it, which I don't recall you singing in the previous record. I might be wrong.
I wouldn't call it singing necessarily on the other stuff. It's more of just like somewhat riding the line of doing like a spoken word type situation, like dipping my toe into leading into trying to add melody to it. Like it's all just kind of been building and building to try to figure out the path, like one record has led to the next, doing all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess the point I was making was like Ken Mode and Daughters put out records this year that are exceptionally heavy and dark, and it's a sign of the times, I would say. The everything is kind of doomy and kind of, we're heading towards the apocalypse. The world is ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's surprising to me that it's still not the most popular style of music. I guess people are still listening to mumble rap and Taylor Swift and Beyonce and being all happy. And it's like, guys, you realize that it's that internet culture. Like you're just trying to numb yourself to the realities of what's happening, and by just, oh, don't worry about it, don't think about it, just go dance. You know what I mean? And I wish that more people would, I guess, acknowledge what you guys are doing to help balance the world out a little bit.
Yeah,
'cause that's really all it is.
Yeah,
like, we don't want it all violent and dark. It just needs a little bit of a balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just the way the cycle of things gets. You know, like 20 years ago, like when Pantera was heavy as fuck and Metallica was gigantic, and there were genuine, like, you know, metal and heavy music was really a super popular thing, and eventually, you know, like heavy music in the grand scheme of things has kind of waned, I guess would be the word, and the hip hop side of things has taken over.
Yeah, and not that I have a problem with hip hop. Hip hop's great.
Yeah, same. But yeah, I just think it's just the cycle of things, you know, like rock and roll is fucking rock and roll, but it can't stay on the top of the charts for 30 years, you know. It's gonna, like, something else has to come through, and I think whatever happens next, I don't know how it will sound or what will. It's so interesting to think about, like, what the fuck will music sound like in another 30 years, like, with just how much everything is changed. But
yeah, I remember when dubstep came out, thinking like, oh no, is this the future?
Yeah, I'm real glad it's not.
Yeah. You had like bands like Korn coming out with albums that had dubstep just to be relevant. I'm like, guys, don't. What are you guys doing? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know where music goes from here. I guess maybe the creation of new instruments with technology would be cool, but it's going to take away some of the visceralness, some of the animal savageness of it if it goes all synth or all programming, you know? Yeah.
I mean, but the way things work, though, that if, say, in 30 years, everything is just totally synth-driven or electronically driven, people are going to get fed up with that, and then they're going to want to revisit what it sounds like to play a screaming guitar.
Right.
You know, and then I think that it's something, you know, it'll cycle. Everything will cycle. People will do it. It gets old. So they go back and revisit things, and then that creates something new. You know, like they keep picking and choosing.
Unless we all go down that road of what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? When we're all becoming one with machine.
Cyborg.
What's the word though? There is a. It's like I'm losing it right now. Whatever. When we all become part of machine. And do you think that's going to happen, where we can transfer our consciousness into like a robot and just be a robot?
I don't know. As cool as that sounds, I don't know if that would actually happen on any like viable level in the foreseeable future. Like, I do think that we'll be able to do some pretty crazy ass shit when it comes to using our brains and controlling. I mean, like, the way you can control, like, if someone has a severed limb and you can wire in a 3D printed arm onto someone and they can control it now. I think shit like that will get way more prevalent and way better, that you'll get to have a Luke Skywalker hand at some point.
That'd be awesome.
But I don't necessarily know if, you know, like, we'll be able to jack straight into the internet, like Matrix style. But,
oh man, I don't know. I sometimes go into these rabbit holes reading shit, and I saw that fucking, what's his name, Elon Musk is working on something like that, the Neuralink.
Yeah,
and that shit just it's simultaneously interesting and terrifying. Like, I'm into it. I want to know more. I'm down with the idea of just uploading and not having to worry about my physical body as much, because I made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of stage diving and car accidents and nonsense. So, but also, you lose your identity, man. Like, you'll lose who you are. And I don't want to go into that world. Like, the reason I brought all this up is I'm thinking, once you're in that world, you won't have that urge of, hey, I'm bored of this, so let's create something different.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have everything. You'll have access to all of it because of the internet. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I can't tell.
Yeah.
I guess that's part of being human, of not having access to all of it at once.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but I think that's a good thing. Is not having access to everything is a good thing to a certain extent, because it forces research, really. Like, that's the only...
And creativity.
Yeah, and if everything was literally just right there to be picked apart at all times within your brain, what the fuck would that do to your brain? It would be so strange.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think you could ever take away how good it feels to engage with something on a physical level. You know what I mean? Like, what it feels like to hold a record versus pushing play on Spotify. They're both great. You're both getting more or less the same result of listening to music, but holding a record just feels so much better. And maybe it will take the backseat to all the digital shit. Again, you know, records will fade away again to a certain extent, but I feel always going to...
I feel like that's just us, though, man. I mean, I think you and I are a similar age. How old are you?
I'm 37.
Yeah, we're both 37. So I think that's our generation, though, man. Like, we kind of grew up with records, and we grew up with, you know, tape and all that. And I feel that younger kids, like my younger sister, like, she doesn't give a shit about vinyl. You know what I mean? She doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, why? Oh, cool. You got to flip after 3 songs. I have all of the songs right here instantly. So they don't really. I have a feeling that it is going to go away. Like, I know that records made a kind of a resurgence because they became kind of a collector's type of item, but I think we're the last of that. I think we're definitely the last of the physical media generations.
I hope not. I mean, because these records are still going to exist, you know, and so there's always going to be, even if records aren't being produced en masse like they are now, you know, people our age will be having kids, and those records are still going to be around in the house. And so it'll be like what happened with me. Like, I found my dad's record collection. That's true. We didn't even have a record player, but I would go through all of them. I took out all the sleeves. I would read the lyrics, you know. That's like why I'm in love with Simon and Garfunkel, was because I found my dad's like collection of Simon and Garfunkel records. And then eventually I got to the point to where I got a record player and I could play them, and it just did a whole thing. So I think definitely things are going to change, but that form of media is still going to physically exist in our world and in our houses, and people will find them, and hopefully it won't fade away into obscurity. It will be a thing that even if it's a niche group of people who will still be able to like love what it feels like to hold a record, put on a record, how much you have to engage with the record to flip it over, and that it keeps you more or less in the same area. You know what I mean? Like, you can't put on a record and then walk away, and you want to put on a record and sit there, listen to the actual record, and when it's time to flip it, you flip it, and then that gives you that, read the lyrics, you hold the artwork. It feels so good. I would hope that no matter what, there's always going to be some group of people that want to do that.
I hope so, man. And it's up to us, really. It's up to us to pass that over to the next generation.
Straight up.
I appreciate. I go out every record store day just to, even if I don't have money, I just go and walk around and talk to people just to keep it alive, you know, because a lot of record stores are closing down. I'm terrified of Amoeba shutting down. I heard that their lease is up and everything, so I don't want that to go away. And the same goes with books. You know, everybody's reading Amazon Kindles and all that bullshit. Like, it's not the same as having an actual book in your hand with pages that you turn and you read. You know, like it's on us, guys, whoever's listening, to pass this information along to the younger generation. Like, do you have kids? You don't have kids.
I don't have kids, no. But if I did, I would be taking them into physical bookstores, because it it's so real. Like going into a bookstore and smelling what old books smell like and holding them, and like it means something. At least it means something to me. And so if I could pass that on, I'm 100% about it.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I was thinking, I always, this thought kind of crosses my mind all the time when you were mentioning how when you were growing up, you listened to like Simon and Garfunkel and you found those records. For me, it was like Pink Floyd and Zeppelin, that kind of stuff. Do you think how do you think we're going to change the future generations when they go to our record collection and it's like Cult Leader and, you know, Daughters and Ken Mode? It's like super it's way different. Do you think it's going to get more aggressive, or do you think they might balance it out and go backwards now, and we'll have a whole generation of Simon and Garfunkel and stuff like that?
I don't know, man. I honestly think it'll all exist within whatever pockets. You know what I mean? Like, because you could find a Simon and Garfunkel record, or you could find like a Tom Waits record or something. You know what I mean? Like, Tom Waits comparatively was gnarly as shit compared to Simon and Garfunkel. So like, even if it's not with, you know, quotation marks heavy, there's something. There truly is something heavy about Simon and Garfunkel, in my opinion.
For sure.
But there's also something heavy but more visceral about like Tom Waits, you know. So those things are going to exist. So if someone finds like a Cult Leader record, or if someone finds like an Emma Ruth Rundle record, they're drastically different.
Right.
But they're both still heavy music, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's going to exist. But then if someone finds like my Wu-Tang record and puts that on, Wu-Tang's heavy as fuck.
Yeah, they are.
Gravediggers was heavy as fuck. So it's just like, it's cool.
It's all a matter of perspective, I guess, and finding what you consider to be heavy. Like, you know, when you mentioned that Simon and Garfunkel is heavy, like you look at that meme you see on the internet, it's everywhere, where if somebody gets sad and they play that song and they just zoom in to their face.
Yeah.
It's like there's something super powerful about those little notes that they're playing in that song, the way it works, that it's heavy. It's emotionally heavy, I guess. It's not necessarily distortion heavy or, you know, fast drums heavy.
Yeah, that's where I'm more focused on. Like, the phrase heavy literally just kind of means emotionally heavy to me. Like, of course I fucking love down-tuned guitars and like just big slamming riffs and shit. But it's just as heavy to me as like a Nick Cave song. Like, I get just as much out of like fucking Cannibal Corpse as I do out of Nick Cave. You know?
Nice.
But one is heavy because they're down-tuned and just slamming, but the other one is heavy because it plays with your emotions, and I don't know. Whatever.
Well, let me ask you. You used to play bass in Gaza, and then you just jumped to become the vocalist for Cult Leader. And if anyone's listening and is not aware of the situation, most of you from Cult Leader were in Gaza,
right?
And there was issues with the lead singer in Gaza, I believe. And then you guys broke off and did Cult Leader, and you took over vocal duties. Why that decision? Why not continue playing bass?
Well, to actually start up, I have never actually been a bass player. Like, I'm a guitarist.
Okay.
And so like
same thing.
Yeah. I mean, but I never went home and picked up my bass and jammed on the bass. You know what I mean? Like, bass was my job within that band.
Right.
And it was my way into that band, and it was my way into making, getting in and being in a touring band and doing those things. So it was a huge opportunity, but they needed a bass player. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. No problem. But, at the end of a tour, I wouldn't go home and continue playing bass. I would play guitar.
Okay.
And so just, when everything changed and there was a new opportunity to come up, it was either like, well, I can jump on guitar and we can just have two guitarists and I'll play guitars with Mike, and we'll just do that thing. And then we'll find a vocalist. But Mike is one of the sickest guitarists I've ever known in my entire life. and he's a genius. So and I mean, it's like, well, I can continue writing on guitar, like what I've always done, and then like, you know, like, so I have my hand in playing guitar in our music while during the writing process. But it's predominantly Mike's instrument and place in the band, and he's doing a fucking great job, and he doesn't need me to jump on second guitar.
Right.
And so the other hole to be filled was a vocalist, and I was always doing the backup stuff, or like backup vocal stuff. But growing up, I had done just vocals in bands, like just, you know, doing that kind of stuff. So like there's some experience from, you know, 20 years ago that I was just like, I'll try it. Nice. And it wasn't that those guys didn't sign on immediately. You know, it was like, yeah, we'll let you try it, and then we'll see how it goes. But if, you know, and so it's been a growing process up until now. Like I'm still growing and learning and doing those things. But, you know, I think that if it happened and it sucked, I wouldn't have wanted to do it, and the dudes definitely would have been like, no. So
right.
It was an opportunity to do something different. I really enjoy challenging myself to the point to where, like, it's something I could drastically, hugely fail at. You know, so it forces you into a whole other level of preparation to do it. And so, like, I'm not comfortable in not holding an instrument while standing in front of people. I'm not comfortable doing interviews. So like these things, like I do them for a large part is to force myself to interact with people and to change and just to, like, you know, make myself do something else. So like, and I love the artistic outlet of it. I love what it has led to artistically and like allowed me to do. But one of the huge motivations for it was just forcing myself into a different position mentally, where I have to change everything I knew about being on stage in front of people was out the window, because I had to find a completely new way of approaching it. Yeah. And I fucking dig it. And like, if I could go for the rest of my life without actually speaking to another person, I would probably do it, which is a bad thing, you know, and I recognize that it's a bad thing and it's not good for me, but it's kind of a natural state for me, is like, I can shut down and go for 3 days and not speak to anyone, and then realize I haven't spoken to anyone in 3 days. So like doing this, and, you know, my girlfriend, if I'm quiet for more than an hour, she's like, "What's up?" You know, and what's on your mind? And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm perfectly content." You know, like, and it's not that I'm ignoring her or anything. It's just I enjoy being in her presence and being around her and being with her. But for some reason, the trigger to interact with people just isn't there. Right. So if I can do anything to, like, put myself in a position that forces me to do that, then I think that it's just overall for keeping myself functional as a human.
Right, so. Right, and growing as well, man. I mean, I could definitely relate to that. One of the reasons I started the podcast too, mentally, for myself, was kind of as a therapy, because I'm the same way. I hate everyone. Like, not that I hate everyone. I don't want people to hurt or anything like that. I just don't like it. I want to be by myself. Leave me alone. And by forcing myself to talk to people about it, and it turns out I'm actually okay at, like, that aspect of sales. You know, like, most of my day jobs have all been sales related and like talking to people. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think I hate people. It's like, I'm so tired of trying to sell them something and having to deal with customer service support and all that nonsense, that I need to work on it. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, it helps you grow. It helps you be a human. And interact with other humans that, you know, are all around us. And I think that's super important for everyone. I think that's something that we are stepping away from with social media, and everybody's just creating these fake personas online to make themselves feel better and not dealing with people in the real world. And, I think people should find more outlets to communicate and connect. And maybe that way we'll solve some of our conflicts and our our issues with war and people shooting other people. Like, I'm sure that maybe I'm off, but if someone would have probably talked to one of these shooters that have, shot a school or shot up a club or something, if they had communication with other humans, I'm sure someone could have talked them out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I
mean? I agree. I mean, there's some shit you cannot change, and no matter what action you take, it's not going to change the end result. But I do believe that paying attention to someone changes things drastically for the person that you're paying attention to. You know what I mean? So, like, even for myself, because I am so, like, tied up in my own head and I'm just there, that when my girlfriend pulls me out of it, I appreciate it so much. And, like, I'm not, like, dwelling on, like, dark, violent fantasies or anything like that, but it's just like, oh, like, I have someone to relate to. I have someone that I can actually, like, work out the things that are going on in my head. I can speak to her about it and we can talk about it, and then my day's better. So and so I could only hope that for the people who are doing, like, this fucking horrible violent shit, that, like, if you can get to them before any of this stuff happens and have a conversation and fucking listen to what they have to say and try to find a solution that's non-violent and makes everyone kind of, I don't know, more peaceful and wakes them up, then fucking go for it. Because what do you have to lose in just speaking to the person? But obviously we see what there is to lose when the person is left to their own means and what they do on their own. It's terrible.
Yeah, man. That's why music's always been so important to me. Like, as a fan, listening to it, I'm very passionate about it. With going to shows, like, even if it means to the detriment of my physical well-being, like, I'll go to a show. Like, I remember I was talking to Andy from Every Time I Die about that I had like 104 fever. I was dying, and I was still trying to drag myself to their fucking show. And my girl's like, you need to stop, lay down, drink some water. But that love and passion of music is because I feel it does change people.
Yeah,
music has the power to change someone's frame of mind. Like, when I was in the band, I remember playing at a house party where there was a bunch of hip hop people, and they were all giant clothes, and I was like, they're not gonna like what the fuck we're doing at all, because we're more of a proggy metal type of band, and they were jamming out, and I'm like, man, you see, like, music can change anyone. Like, and it's on musicians to make change and talk to people, like you said, talk to them through music as well. I wanted to ask you, since we brought up I brought up day jobs. What's your day job? So I'm sure that's part of the whole thing. Musicians don't make a whole bunch of money.
No, there's no way that we could fund ourselves as a band if we weren't on tour all day, every day, every day of the year. We could function that way if we never ever stopped touring, but that's not real life. So I mean, but I have a desk job. Like, I've been working for the last year and a half trying to get, like, a real grown-up desk job. I don't necessarily want to say what it is, but, like, just trying to do that, like, focus on something that is
stable
and gives you an opportunity to continue doing what we do. So I'm trying to focus on things to where it's all self-driven. Like, it's a desk job, it's businessy, but if I do it well, it means that I am in charge of myself and my own schedule. So it will allow me to fully create an environment where I can make music and I can make as much art as I want, but I can also really try to stabilize my life outside of art and have, real relationships and somewhere to live, and all that kind of shit. So, I mean, because like for so long, like somewhere to live didn't matter. Like we live in the van, like 8 months a year we're traveling. And when you come home, you're like, oh, I'll stay with my sister, I'll stay with my parents. It doesn't matter. Like I can travel when I'm not on tour. I could go somewhere else and visit other people,
Right.
But that's kind of it had its time and place. And now where I'm at, how old I am, I'm almost 40. And I don't want to be a homeless music hobo. and like it was romantic as it is, like I want to be able to make my art with my friends and the people that I love, but I also want to be with the person that I love outside of this little bubble of music. So
yeah, it's hard, man. There's not a lot of money unless like you said, and even then if you toured all the time constantly, like you're just getting by, you know what I mean? You're not making a bunch of money, or you can buy mansions, like that fantasy of the 80s of like rock star money. Yeah. That shit's not around.
No, that shit's not real. It's literally enough money to keep going, and hopefully you don't have to worry about food. If the van breaks down, you could afford to pay for whatever has happened to the van. Like it's enough to function and to live, but it's not like you're gonna go on tour, come home, and put like a down payment on a house.
Yeah,
it's just enough to keep going. But then even with that, like how many times a year can you tour the U.S., more than 2 tours in the U.S., then you're burning everybody out.
Yep.
Like, and
people stop showing up to shows. Like, if I could catch them next time.
Yeah. That's not a way I want to do it. Like I want to be able to, like, for myself as much as other people, I want to, if we're playing, I want it to mean something. I don't want it to be like it's going to be like the 10,000th time they've come in the last 2 years. So like, I'm not interested in that anymore. Like before it was literally just like, no, we're going out, we're touring as hard as we possibly can for as long as we can, because it's punk and it's what we need to do and it's how we need to do it. But it worked, and it built our life as a band. It had its time and place. It really did function the way we wanted it to and do what it needed to do. But now, we're getting up there. It's time to kind of sack up and try to find a real balance where we can create our art and have a stable life outside of it, which is a very, very, very difficult thing.
For sure, man. And I don't want to discourage any young musicians. Like, you're young, go out and do that shit. Go be on the road, go be homeless. Because it's an experience. It helps you grow, like you said. And it's a very, and I congratulate you that you've gotten to this point in your life, because it is a very difficult choice to give up that dream, that, especially not give up the dream. I'm sorry, because that makes it sound very negative. You guys are still doing it. So it's just that fantasy of, I'm just going to do the art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you can't do it forever. You have to have some kind of balance in your life, that stability, especially as you get older, and having a partner, like you said, a girlfriend and a house and all that. Like, when you're young and stupid, your boys are all be like, oh, you're selling out. You're just going to go live the cookie cutter, family dream of being with a girl and having a house. Like, I kind of want that.
Yeah. I want a real life. I don't want to have to stress over
bills,
well, not even just bills, but like literally just being like, dude, I don't know if I can afford lunch,
Yeah.
And so like that, it's just, it gets old, real old. And the older I get, the more gnarly the idea of that, it's like, why would I put myself in that situation at this point in my life, Like, it's definitely not like giving up the dream. Like, we're still getting to create our art on the level that we want to create it at. And it's not like we're like striving to like, we got to hit the next level, man. We're trying, it's literally like, whatever happens with the band, or whatever comes out of putting out records is awesome, and it's great, and it will help us make another record in the future. But
your life doesn't depend on it.
Yeah, like the drive of being 20 and being on tour and being just like, this is all that matters. All that matters. It can only be that way for so long. Yeah. And, and
it can be very toxic if you don't.
Yeah, it is toxic. It's very toxic to yourself and to just like your relationships in general. So being able to focus on that and then try to hit a place in life to where you can still make your art. Yeah. And it can still be meaningful and also not have to worry about paying for a burrito. You know?
Yeah, man. I tell I tell stories to my fiance all the time about that shit. Like, you know, I'm on the road with the band and having to make the choice of, well, I have $5 and I can either eat something or buy the most amount of alcohol I can buy for $5 and then just numb myself out so I don't have to think about the fact that I'm not eating or sleeping well. You know what I mean? And it can get super, super toxic living like that, you know. Yeah. Especially my journey was a lot of alcohol. So it was not healthy. Thankfully, I was able to survive all of that nonsense and, you know, get a job and now try and live a normal life. So we're in the holidays right now, kind of. We just had Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming. So now that you have this new life of having a place and a family, a girlfriend and everything, are you into that kind of stuff, the traditional like Thanksgiving get-togethers or Christmas get-togethers? Because I know as a musician, when you were touring and all the time like that, you don't have time for that shit. You're playing Christmas shows, you're playing Thanksgiving. So now that things are kind of slowing down, are you into that, like with your girl?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because, you know, like I live in Los Angeles now, and I live there with her, and my entire family's in Salt Lake, but growing up, like it was like I can't wait to get out of Salt Lake. I'm going as far away as I can. I don't care. I don't have the drive to stay in contact with people. Even my own family, you know, so like just going out, spending all my time on tour, just being away from everything and everyone. Yeah, but now that things have like my life is like readjusted and it's taking a different phase and I've moved to Los Angeles, I miss my family terribly. You know, like my little sister just had her first baby. And so it's like, you know, I got to be there when he was born. And then now every time I see him, he's grown like 4 inches. And it's just like, oh man, I don't get to watch this kid grow up. Yeah. But it's okay. You know, he's not my kid. He's my sister's. But it's and how much I miss my parents, you know, like it's strange because back in the day, it was literally like, no, I gotta go. I'm just out. But now, like, when you're trying to find a true balance in your life, it's like, no, man, I'm fucking miss my family. Yeah. And I'm super happy with where I'm at, and I love my girlfriend's family and everything, but like, you know, but like the drive, I'd never expected to miss my own family as much as I do now. And so it's great. Like I'm in Salt Lake now. And so it's been cool. Like I just get to spend the last 2 days hanging out with my family and then go and play a show and come back, hang out with my family and go play a show. And then we're going to go on tour. So it's cool. I really enjoy them in a way that I never actually expected to, which may sound like a weird thing to say, you know, because but everybody has that drive to, like, you know, get away from their family and do all that stuff and like disconnect.
Sure. Yeah.
But now that where I'm at is like, goddamn, they're cool people and I want to hang out with them. You know.
Are there any traditions that you have that you're into for, like, let's just focus on Christmas, I guess, because that's the one that's coming. Like for me, I like to watch. There's a couple movies that I need to watch during Christmas time, you know, and I need to have it like and this is all self-imposed now, but like I need to have the tree and I need to have like a fireplace thing and then the movie like that. I don't know why. Like that's a whole setup I like having. Do you have something like that?
No, not necessarily. No, I like with our family. Our whole thing was like Christmas Eve. Like my mom's brother and like his family would get together with our family, and then we would spend Christmas Eve together. So like that's our tradition. And as the families have grown and changed and done all that stuff, then, you know, it's become more difficult. But we've never gone a year in our entire life without spending Christmas Eve with their family, except for when I was, you know, off doing my own thing, or if because I'm in Los Angeles and my girlfriend has a small family, and so it kind of sucks to have her, like, if she bounces, you know, her parents are just kind of on their own for Christmas. So we're trying to find a balance. You know, like this. And with this Christmas, I'm going to be on tour until like 2 days before Christmas. Oh, shit. So there's no Christmas tree. There's nothing this year until, you know, I'm going to come back to Salt Lake at the end of this tour. My girlfriend's going to fly in. We'll have Christmas Eve with my family. And then Christmas Day, we're flying back to Los Angeles to have Christmas Day with her family.
Oh, God, you're going to do the holiday travel? Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, but on this one, I just flew out here on Black Friday, like the day after Thanksgiving, and it was fine. It was all right. I flew out of Burbank, so that's fuck LAX.
Yeah, LAX sucks, man. I hate that place. A couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up here. If you could book your own dream tour, what's that tour? What bands are you playing with?
Shit. Neurosis.
Nice.
Who else?
Have you played with Neurosis yet at all?
Yeah. We've gotten to do, within the last like 2 or 3 years, we've played a whole bunch of fests with them. Nice. Yeah, so I fucking love those dudes, man. But I would definitely want to spend as much time on the road as possible with those guys. Converge is just some of my favorite people ever and one of my favorite bands. So, like, yeah, absolutely. I'd spend any amount of time with those guys. Being on tour with them is a dream, and it's so nice and it's fun. And then the wild card would be Judas Priest, I think.
Nice.
That'd be awesome. Or Merciful Fate. One of those two. Like, just some, like, just ripping old Legendary. School fucking awesome. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll pay a lot of money to see Neurosis, Converge, and Cult Leader.
Yeah, I would love that.
That's a good tour. I kind of saw that similar. It was Neurosis, Converge recently. They played here.
Was Amon Ra?
Yeah.
I was at that show. Yeah.
Nice. That was a good show. Yeah. Favorite cult? Since you are the cult leader, you must answer.
There's, it's like a kid in a candy store. There's so many. I think. Oh, dude, I don't know, because there's so many different aspects to so many different cults, but you got to give it up to Uncle Charlie to a certain extent.
Uncle Charlie,
the family.
It's so nuts when you think about that he never actually killed anyone.
Well, he may have killed at least one or two people on his own at some point. But it's like, it's just a weird thing. Even with the name cult leader, it wasn't because I have some like extraneous fascination with cults. Cults in general. Mm-hmm. But I love true crime, and I actually do study a lot of different cults and all that kind of stuff, and they are fascinating. But it's one of, like, it would feel cheap to me to focus on cults within the context of our band.
Right.
Like, I want to understand the things that are going on in their brains and how they can get these, like, large groups of people to follow and then fucking kill themselves or kill other people. Like these things, like just the way that they can manipulate people like that is fascinating, and it's interesting, and it's so dark, and there is a lot to mine within all that, but it just feels on the nose to me. That's why we've never put anything cult related on a piece of merch, or it's never been in our artwork. Like, it would just feel cheap to me to be like, oh, we're cult leader, we're gonna put
Charles Manson on a shirt.
Yeah, Manson on a shirt, or like some Shinrikyo homage onto a shirt or anything. It feels too on the nose, but I like the context that it allows me to play in, as opposed to just being like, well, here's a guy who led a cult,
Yeah, and you can definitely like grab those tales and manipulate them so that they are unique in your lyrics and stuff, and not have to straight up talk about the Manson family or any of those directly, but you can just those concepts and the ideas of leading people and convincing them to do things that they wouldn't normally do. Like that is really, like you said, very dark and interesting for sure.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, since it is the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast, I need to ask you, do you drink?
I drink. I'm not necessarily a beer guy, though.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I had Kurt on here, and he doesn't drink at all, so it's like...
Oh, yeah.
It's not... when I originally called the podcast the Rock and Roll Beer Guy thing, it was for me. Like, I'm the guy, but everybody seems to think, like, it has to be a beer podcast, and I've had guests turn it down. Like, I know, like, Howard from formerly of Killswitch doesn't want to do it because just the connotation of having his name on a show that has beer on in the name, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a beer drinker, but
no.
What's your drink of choice?
I'm not much of a drinker in general. I was straight edge until I was almost 30.
Nice.
And so, but then like it wasn't like some big moment where I like broke edge and like became a maniac. It was basically just like, well, like all other things, like it was just, like I don't want to close myself off to all of that stuff. I know I have self-control. I know that alcoholism exists within my family, and, the potential for all that gnarly stuff. So it's basically just like, I don't want to limit myself in any way really anymore with labels of that type or anything. So still have this huge soft spot in my heart for straight edge. But once I did, the first alcohol I ever drank, besides being like 6 years old and my dad giving me a sip of his beer and hating it, but as an adult, the first thing I ever drank was whiskey. Oof. And then I drank beer and I was like, oh, the whiskey's really great. But the beer, And so I like whiskey and bourbon. Don't like scotch. I don't like smoky whiskeys. My favorite, there's a distillery. The only distillery in Utah is a distillery called High West. And
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's my shit. I love High West.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting that that's where you went as your first drinks. Bourbon is kind of an intense thing that I built up to. You know what I mean? I started with beer and then it was rum and vodka, and then eventually made my way to appreciating a good bourbon. But that's an intense way to start.
Yeah. I mean, and for everyone else, I guess it was too, because like they poured 2 shots for me, and like for everyone else, it was an event. It was like, ooh, Anthony's gonna drink, and I was like, I don't know, guys, I just want to try it.
Right.
And then took 2 shots of whiskey, and it was like, whoa, that was good. Everyone's like, that's it.
Yeah,
like you don't get like the first time whiskey face, I was like, no, that was awesome. Tasted good. I liked it.
Very cool.
So yeah, I don't know. Beer took a long time for me to actually develop a taste for it.
Yeah. Same for me. I had that similar situation. Like when I was a little kid, my father gave me a Heineken, and I hated it. And for years, I didn't drink beer. And then it became my life. Like down the road, like I started working in the business and selling beer at bars and focusing mostly on like independent, like craft type of thing. Like that whole craft movement attracted me because it was very similar to like the punk rock music thing. Like there's this big establishment that's kind of taken the world by storm, and here are these little dudes trying to do something different. And that whole aspect was what really drew me in, and the community aspect. It was very similar to like when you're at a show and you're moshing and you fall to the ground and they pick you up, and it's like you get mad when you fall because you're like, what, someone pushed me, and then they pick you up and you're like, oh, okay, cool, we're all pushing each other. And that same thing happens in the beer world. Like we're just kind of trying new things and the sharing it with each other, and the community aspect. They have events all the time. So I don't know, that's really what drew me into the beer world. But I totally get people that don't drink beer. I get it. Yeah. Cool, man. That's pretty much all I had. I was going to ask you if you have any hobbies, but I don't know, between your job and your girl and the band, I'm sure you don't have a lot of time for nonsense.
No, not a lot of time for nonsense. I mean, drawing, I guess, is a hobby, but it's for me, it's just as important as the music, and I get to tie it into the music quite a bit, and all of our merch and all that shit. So you do all the art for the album and stuff? Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude, that's super sick. Yeah. I love the artwork you guys are doing. So thank you. Yeah. So drawing and like just creating visual art is a huge thing. Like the music video that we just put out, I directed that. I made that video, and it was my first time ever trying to do any of that kind of shit. Wow, nice, man. Yeah, so like, I mean, I've always loved cinema and loved films, and this was just my chance to like dip my toe in and see, like, force myself into doing it, and either it was going to work or not. And I like it. I think it turned out pretty cool. Yeah, dude, and it's awesome. And yeah, that, and then other than that, just fucking motorcycles. Okay. I love motorcycles. Dude, I have a fear of them. I can't. I've ridden one a couple times. My grandfather passed away on a motorcycle before I got to meet him, so don't feel too bad. But I guess that fear was instilled in me from my childhood. Like, you'll never ride a motorcycle because that's how your grandfather died. So like, so I've never, and the one time I rode one, I couldn't even balance myself. I was just kind of like waving around like left to right. So, but I've always admired that aspect of like just going across the country on a motorcycle. That sounds like a really cool thing to do once in your life, Yeah, it is a really cool thing, and it's a romantic thing. But then breaking down in the middle of nowhere with no tools and all you guys on a motorcycle, that wakes you up a little bit. But it's fucking really cool and really fun. And like, I mean, like I said, my dad was a biker, and still, he still rides and everything. But so that was one of the coolest things ever. It's like if your dad shows up on his motorcycle to pick you up from school when you're a kid, like, shit. Fuck yeah, guys, I'm out. But then just from that moment, like I'm just trapped, and I fucking love motorcycles. So yeah. Well, cool, brother. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me. I know you're doing the holiday thing and getting ready for tour. Any tour dates you want to, like, when does your tour start? Well, our first show was last night. We played. Yeah, we played in a town called Ogden. It's like an hour north of Salt Lake. And then tonight is our record release show in Salt Lake. Nice. And then I think Wednesday is the beginning of tour. And it starts in Denver, and then we just do a whole U.S. run. We'll be out until Christmas, pretty much. Wow, cool. Well, check out dates online. I'm sure if you make sure to type Cult Leader Band. Yeah. You might get some weird Google results otherwise. But yeah, look up Google Cult Leader Band for tour dates. Is that the website, Cult Leader Band, or? I think it's Cult Leader Music, actually, is our like actual website. And then, find us on Instagram and all that shit. We got all the dates up there. For sure. And pick up the new album. It's the only word I could, my review is one word, and it's vicious. That was my review. Awesome. I posted on Facebook. It's like, the new Cult Leader is vicious. I was listening to it at work in my desk, and I had to turn it off because I wanted to start running around the office and like knocking people's monitors over. Cool. But I appreciate that. Pick it up and support. And thank you. Thanks again, dude. Appreciate it. Yeah, man. Thank you. It's fucking cool. Everybody, take it easy.